So today we're doing an interview prep session. So the approach for this interview prep session, let's remember that think of it like it's a real interview. If you attend an interview today, you never know what questions they might ask you at any point in time. The questions can jump at you from any part of Scrum, any part of Agile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to always give two people an opportunity to answer any of these questions, right? And then if you make any mistake, I'll let you know, I'll correct you, but I'll let you finish speaking, and then I'll tell you the best way to answer that question, and then you can take the correction and maybe attempt it again. Is that okay? And please, you guys are not showing your face. That's fine, but just give a thumbs up so that I can know that we're following or people are here, right? So we're going to be using a random picker. So every time I click on return, it would give a new question. So this is the question: what is your approach to helping your team become more predictable if you observe that their velocity is not predictable sprint over sprint? Who wants to answer this question? I can pick on anybody, but let me give you opportunity of putting your hands up before I pick somebody. Who wants to answer it? Lauren, Sam, Ben? Lawrence, okay, go for it. Go for it.
Thank you very much, Coach. Before I start, you said that we're supposed to answer this like interview, right?
Sorry, your audio is really poor.
Before I start, is it better now?
Yes.
You mentioned that we should answer this like it's a real interview.
Yes.
Okay. That's using the STAR approach.
And any approach.
Yep.
Yeah, comfortable with. Yep.
All right. Thank you for this question. I will start by talking about the situation where I found myself in this specific scenario where my team, hold up, Mike. Okay, so I found myself in a situation where I was brought into a new team, and when I joined that team, I realized that they were not meeting their sprint goals because the velocity was not either not done or the predictability was wrongly done. So each time they only met 50% of their sprint goals. So what I did was, as a new person who joined the team, I tried to first sit with them. Like, I joined their meetings and observed how they facilitated their meetings, and I had a one-on-one based on my observation. I had a one-on-one with the team. Uh, I also wanted to know if it was going to be mentioned in the retrospective, which they did. However, it's always mentioned in their retrospective, but they never rectify it. Like, the essence of having a retrospective is if something is called out, then you guys will improve on it. So what I did was to coach them on the appropriate way of velocity estimation based on knowing the number of story points they've completed over time and getting the average so that we can use that as an estimate when next we're preparing for a new sprint. And we tried that once and twice. Eventually, they started meeting their sprint goals and it became more predictable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for kicking this off. I like where you landed, but what I always try to teach people is simplicity, conciseness is going to be your friend all the time. So sometimes I know that it can get challenging on a call to, go around the place. So there were some things that you mentioned there where you said that their velocity was not correct and their predictability was not something. Those weren't like, there's nothing like that. They're not like your velocity is not correct. What you can say in this situation, and I think you understand where I'm coming from. What you can say in this situation is, you're saying that you got into a new team. So I could say, I became a scrum master to a new team. This team was not new to Scrum. I heard they've been doing Scrum for at least a year, but I noticed that by checking Jira, that their velocity was not predictable. There were large variances between velocity. Now, we all remember what velocity is. I'm teaching. We know that velocity is the number of story points that you complete in a sprint, right? That's what it is. So you commit to a certain number, but you actually complete a certain number, right? So back to the thing, I was just saying, I noticed that their velocity was not predictable over time. So what I did was I observed how the team was doing their backlog refinement to see how they were sizing their stories and how they were sizing their stories, how they were creating their stories, and then also observed during sprint planning how they were doing their sprint plan and if they were even checking their velocity, their average velocity from previous sprints. I discovered that the team had not been doing that, and because they were not coached by the previous Scrum Master. And so what I did was I coached the team. I explained to them the importance of velocity and the importance of predictability. And then I coached the team on how to do it moving forward. So what I did, I made sure was that the next time we did sprint planning, I showed the team their average velocity. I influenced them to make their commitments more realistic in line with the average velocity. And what happened was at the end of the sprint, they completed all their stories because they were now really committing to the velocity they could deliver. And this helped them to imbibe that behavior sprint over sprint, making them more predictable. Any questions here?
No questions.
Okay, others. Any questions? You understand it? If you're asked this question, I'm going to ask another person to answer it, but don't answer it the same I did. Any questions here? Did you get what this question really is asking about? Because you will get it on an exam. Sorry, not an exam, at an interview. Ben, you've been here since. You didn't just join. I've seen you here. Before we start talking, the person that joined is Martin. Who else wants to answer? What is your approach to helping your team become more predictable? If you observe that velocity is not predictable, sprint over sprint, who wants to also attempt to answer this? Let me pick somebody. Sam, how will you answer this if you got an interview and you want that interview now?
Actually, you're going to call me. So, but you basically said it. I think what I'll just add is you try to, like coach the team basically. If it's a new team, like let them know, like coach them and explain to them in details, what velocity is, and try to um, try to embrace like trainings, like cross trainings, like in an efficient way to eliminate the gaps that the teams have and just everything to your that's just what I'm going to add. That's the little contribution I'm going to add.
I'm going
Aside
to
all
give.
the things
I'm
that
going
you
to
said.
give. I'm going to give you an assignment. That was not a good answer. You have to go read. You have to go do research on that, right? I told you exactly what velocity is. I come into a team. You've been thought about velocity. You know that your velocity is how much a team is completing over sprint. If we're saying that a team is not predictable, it means that let's say today they do 20 story points, they complete 20 story points. In another sprint, they're completing 50. In another sprint, they are completing 10. It doesn't show predictability. There must be something wrong somewhere. We're not saying that there will be variances in if I complete 25 this week and I complete 20 next week. It's not bad. Maybe 18 and then back up it up, maybe 30. But we need to see it being even over time, right? So there are two things. Like we already talked about them not using their average velocity, which is another possibility. Another thing that can address this is how do they size their story? How are they sizing their story? Because if they, let's say, for example, I can answer this in a way to say, what I did when I entered my team, I observed the team to find out exactly the root cause of why they were not predictable. I observed during backlog refinement that the team was not very good at sizing user stories, right? They would cite a user story and say the story could be completed within a sprint, but we found that these stories were not getting completed within a sprint and they were moving sprint over sprint. So I taught them how to use relative estimation using Fibonacci sequence to estimate, to cite their stories much better, right? I taught them how to split user story that they don't have too big user stories, to keep their stories small enough to complete in a sprint. And then on top of that, I also made sure that during sprint planning, we are using our average velocity to make our commitments more realistic. And by doing that, the team became more predictable and they were more motivated because now that they saw that they were completing most of their user stories sprint over sprint, they felt more motivated and it kept the morale of the team high and it was well received. That's another way to answer this. But good work. So, Deal, you're going to have to go. If you want to get a Scrum Master job, you should be able to answer this. So this question says, read while I'm talking. This role is about people management. We all know what people management is, right? You know, you have a manager today in your office who does your appraisal, who interacts with you over time, right? What is your approach to managing conflict? As a Scrum Master, if a conflict happens in your team, what will be your approach to managing conflict? I want to pick on somebody. Martin.
Yeah, hi, coach. Coach, I'm literally at work right now. I'm in the middle of something. You can give me 5 minutes, and then I could just, go into
I'll give
detail
you
with
the next question.
the question. Say that again?
Yeah, I'll give you the next question. Let someone else attempt to answer it. Okay, Ben, can you answer this question on the board, on the screen?
In the same situation, in 4 minutes, I'll be done with work. 4 minutes. Mine is 4 minutes. So I'm just listening. In 4 minutes, I'll be done and I'll be out. Sorry.
Lawrence, you want to answer the question?
Sure, I could try. My approach to managing conflicts as a Scrum Master, first off, I'll say that my Scrum team should be self-organizing, which means that if there's any conflict, I normally will keep quiet and see how it is resolved. I'll only step in if they're unable to resolve it internally amongst themselves. And at that point, I'll want to find out what has happened from both parties and find a level ground where we can both agree on a way forward. We can all agree on the way forward and the path forward. So that's my approach. It has happened once before, and that was exactly what I did. Spoke with both team members. It happened between the product owner, and one of the developers. A developer who needed some information, it wasn't coming. So at some point, it turned into an impediment, which I had to step in, and were able to resolve it amicably. Both parties getting what they wanted, and that was how that was resolved.
So if my volume is okay, I can keep in before I step out. If that's
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
I can.
Okay.
Speak
Well,
now.
yeah. Is Lawrence, are you done?
Oh, sorry,
I'm done.
Lawrence.
You're done? Okay. So Ben, what is your approach to how do you approach managing conflict as a Scrum Master?
So conflicts are usually unavoidable in organizations, and with way agile as an approach to way of work encourages everybody to be expressive and everybody to be open, transparent, and be the first thing I would do pretty much is to create an environment where people are free to express themselves, but respecting the other people's opinion. And secondly, or rather, firstly, the work. I would like to know the work. What's that word called, Coach? Working agreement. Sorry, the working agreement
Working agreement
for
conflict.
yes, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, you're
The
right.
working agreement is paramount to setting the tone of what is deemed as right or acceptable in the organization. And I will make sure that that working agreement is done by the team themselves. They are committed to what is supposed to be done and what is not supposed to be done, and the consequences of not doing them. So if I see that, there is no working agreement, I try to make sure that there's one and make sure that everybody commits to it. And if there's a situation where I still find out that, we have still, sorry, I'm working as I'm talking, they still find out that we have issues, I address that or make sure that we address that during retrospective. Because the good thing about Scrum and Agile is that we always pick, as a Scrum Master, we always try to pick coaching moments and teaching moments and moments where we can catch these gaps and differences of opinions. So I believe that when the working agreement is done properly and everybody is committed to it, it reduces conflict a great deal. And in situations where conflict still arises, we tend to address them in ceremonies and pockets like daily Scrum, just to understand where people are, and most likely in retrospective, where during retrospectives where we openly and freely, speak about our challenges and how to move forward in the next sprint.
Okay. Okay, so I like your answers that you guys gave. There's no right or wrong answer to this one, but I like, Lawrence, trying to get to the root cause of the matter, not stepping in to escalate the situation and then finding a safe time to bring people to order. I like how Ben said about making sure that things like this are addressed in the working agreement and then see what is the working agreement say about it, if there were any times the agreement, if any of the situation broke an agreement within the working agreement, and then use that to try to find the solution to the problem. So great work, everyone. So this one, I just wanted to see your approach to it. Let's move on. I don't really like this one. Okay. This one's a straightforward question. What is the difference between Scrum and Agile? Thanks for joining us, Anthony. What is the difference between Scrum and Agile?
I'm driving right now. I can't really answer anything.
From my coach, from my little understanding, I would just like to chip in just a little bit, not a lot, but from my little understanding, Scrum is an agile framework, and then from how you've taught us in class, it's like agile is literally like the umbrella where we have like all these other frameworks underneath it. So basically, these other frameworks like Scrum and the rest Scrum and the rest literally are just like they adopted agile. What's it called? Sorry, man. I'm just waffling. But then, Scrum is an agile framework. That's what I can really say. And then agile is like the umbrella where we have like these other frameworks and then like Scrum, Kanban, and the rest of them.
Is anybody interested in trying to answer this?
Okay, I'll just.
Okay, go ahead, Sam.
So, Agile is more product focused. Scrum fosters a cross-functional, self-organizing team. Agile also works well when the scope is unknown. Plus, Agile is more smaller size than nimble teams. Scrum is self-organizing, as I said earlier. Scrum is also used to implement Agile. Scrum is the delivery is maximum in value, and the best value is like key focus. Agile also encourages like fail fast, learn quickly, basically. Yeah.
So is that the difference between Scrum and Agile?
Yeah, so is Sam done? I wanted to add something to it as well.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, so Agile is a way of doing work. Agile is a way of his mindset. Agile, simply putting it in a simple term, it's the delivery of work rapidly and within a short period that is open to changes, that welcomes quick and fast delivery of either software or value product. It's a product management, product delivery way of doing things. While Scrum is a way to do Agile. For a typical example would be Agile being somebody trying to stay healthy, and Scrum would be exercising. While we have other ways of being healthy, you can say Kanban could be eating the right food, and XP could be, just sleeping at the right time. So while Agile is a way we do work, Scrum is a framework that does Agile and practices, Agile, for lack of a better way of explaining it.
That's a very good way of answering this. For context, thank you. You're that's very clear, right? Agile is a project management methodology that it's a mindset too. It's a mindset. It's a project management methodology that promotes incremental and iterative software development. Yeah, where you can respond to changes much faster. Right? It's a philosophy. It's a mindset. You can say that it is based on. It has its own principles, 12 principles, all very abstract that actually define the way that you can embody being an agile, the agile mindset. Remember, there's working software over comprehensive documentation as an example, right? Individual interactions over processes and tools, right? And all of that. While Scrum itself, remember, when you read about Agile, it doesn't tell you how you're going to do anything. It just tells you this is how you should think about the software you're building, how you should be approaching how you build it. Scrum itself is a specific implementation of Agile. Remember that there's the Agile umbrella under which we have different frameworks such as Scrum, Kanban, XP, LESS, and all of that, right? Scrum itself is a specific framework. It's lightweight. It proposes empiricism, and it's all about people collaborating together towards a common goal. And Scrum specifically, if you want to add, for Scrum to work, Scrum has its own specific roles, specific events, and specific artifacts. Without which, if it's not embedded, we were not doing Scrum. Scrum needs all of those pieces to work well. So while Agile is abstract, which is we need you to deliver software faster, we need you to respond to change faster, we need you to deliver work in small increments, but that's Agile. I mean, Scrum is the how you do it, right? How do you do it? By it specifying the roles you should have, specifying the events, and specifying your artifacts. Any question? I recommend you all go and watch a video, the video where we did training, or you go and read up more about it. But great answer. Good. So in case a people manager comes and says, what do you think makes a great Scrum Master from your perspective? How can you answer this? Some of these questions are I don't want to say they're simple, but they're not technical. Like, so the answer should be coming like this, because there's some technical questions that are here. Like, if you have a lot of bugs, what do? You can get those kind of questions. What do you think makes a great Scrum Master?
Yeah, I can give it a try.
Thank you.
So, in my opinion, what makes a great Scrum Master is, first of all, your communication, how well you communicate with people, and also how humble you are. You can be a Scrum Master who is uh, like not humble, kind of aggressive, or you know what I'm trying to say. And again, you need to know how to work with a team. Scrum is not just you alone, it's a Scrum team. You need to know how to work with the product owner, you need to know how to work with the developers, and you have to be always uh, keep your fingers on the pulse when it comes to matters that arise and coordinate with your team accordingly. Again, going by some of the Scrum principles, you have to be committed to doing your work. You don't need anyone to tell you what to do. In Scrum, you're self-organizing, so everybody knows what you're meant to do. And I think finally, an understanding of what you're doing. You need to know exactly what is going on. You need to understand. Without understanding what you're doing, you cannot get good user stories. You cannot get good epics. You cannot contribute accordingly. So that's my opinion.
Okay, thanks. Not a bad answer. Anyone want to try?
Coach, in addition to what the last brother just said, I think what makes a great Scrum Master are some of the qualities he or she possesses, and for example, the facilitation skills, being a servant leader, having like a deep understanding of Scrum itself,
Yeah.
being a great communicator, like the last person just mentioned as well. Obviously, facilitating improvements within the team, great coaching skills as well. And I think the last one I would say is probably adaptability. So these are some of the things that I believe that's some of the qualities I believe a great Scrum Master should possess.
Okay. I'm going to ask you guys a question I should have asked at the beginning of this class. Did anybody take a look? If you did, I gave an instruction when we were starting this class. Did anybody do it? Did you take a look at these questions by show of hands to try to answer it at all?
Yeah, I did. I don't know. I'm driving, so I can't text. I did. I saw the questions.
Anybody else? And you actually tried to answer it and wrote it down. Let me also tell you a fact about some of these questions. I know someone who answered all these questions. I kid you not. Every single question she answered. She had a job today. She's a Scrum Master today. She answered all of these questions. What I mean, she answered. She literally took every question and wrote her response down to. Even though I still added a few more questions to this thing, so it's a much longer list than what she did before. Answered every single question, wrote it down, sent it to for review. It was reviewed, gave her feedback, canceled something, blah, blah, blah. She had a job today. She took her time and wrote it down. What I'm going to say this is, if you've not done it, you need to do it. If you really want the Scrum Master job, especially if it's new to you, you've not been in that space, whether as an observer, heard about it in your company, if you are new to it, to get the job means that you have to do something very different, which is things like that. Like, take it, write down your questions and get someone to review it. Because when you write something down, it sticks. So I'm just going to encourage you guys, because I've asked some very basic Scrum question. We've not asked anything truly difficult apart from the predictability one, which I expect people to might not be great at answering that. But when we talk about some of these questions, I'm expecting like the answers should be good. But at the end of the day, this is not for me to pick at, hey, no, the idea is for you to now be aware of how much work there is to be done if you want to be scaling interviews. That's your idea. If I was going to answer this question, I would try to lace it with words that hiring managers like, and that'll make me seem like someone that understands Scrum very well. I'll say the best kind of Scrum Masters are the Scrum Masters who understand that they are servant leaders, which means that while they don't do the work, they need to create the environment for the team to do the best work. It's not all about the Scrum Master, but all about the team and the value that they bring. And a great Scrum Master is a Scrum Master that understands the Scrum Master's role to their team, which is teaching them about the Scrum framework, coaching them, and protecting the team from external impediments, understanding their role to the product owner by coaching the product owner on Scrum, best backlog management practices, and making sure that the product owner can get the most value from the backlog, as well as understanding their role to the organization, which is not just coaching the team, but also helping an organization in its maturity in Agile. And that could be through training, through learning sessions, through creating documentation that helps the team to embrace Agile so that it creates an environment where Agile can continue to thrive. I will keep it as simple as that. That's my one approach. If I wanted to go that textbooky, right? You can break it down like that because the Scrum Master has 3 roles that they do. The role to the team, the role to the PO, and the role to the organization. I would say that you guys should think about it when you're saying things like that. It lets people understand that you understand that as a Scrum Master, while you're communicating your team, you're also communicating upwards to the organization. Does that make sense? Any questions about that before we move on? Are we all good? Okay. Now this is the favorite one that always comes up. Like, chances are by the time you do 2 or 3 interviews, you must ask you this question once. This particular question. So tell me about a time when a member of your team was being difficult and refused to participate in daily scrum. How did you handle it? This question is not complete because I copied and pasted into this random sampler. Tell me, tell me how you handled a time when a member of your team was being difficult and refused to participate in the daily scrum. Who wants to answer? If you have to think about it, if you say it's you can say, okay, just give me 1 minute to think about it and give a good response. Because even on interviews, you can actually ask for some time. I do that regularly. Someone asks me something, I need to think about it. And that sounds like a good question. Just give me 1 minute, so I can give you a good response. So who wants to attempt to answer this question? Lawrence, can you answer?
Yeah, I can, but I don't want to be the one answering all the questions. It's
No, go
everyone should.
for it. Because I go for it.
For me, I've been in a situation like that where I had a team member who was being difficult and refusing to participate in daily scrum. First of all, I it was brought up in the retrospective. It was addressed in the retrospective. He was fortunately attended the retrospective, and when he was asked a question, he came up with excuses like him being busy with other things, tied up with other work that's making him unavailable. And what I did was to coach him on the importance of being in that daily scrum, daily stand up, and he's important as a team member. He's accountable, and he has his own tasks to do. So he's not in the daily scrum. He's not giving us the right updates. He's not sending the right signals. And eventually he understood and started attending. That's how that was resolved. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed the last part. So you had a conversation during retrospective, and then what was
He gave his excuses for not being able to attend daily scrum because he was tied up with other commitments.
Okay.
And I had to coach him on the importance of him attending because every scrum team member has to be committed to his role as a scrum team member. And I explained to him the importance of him being in that daily scrum. And he eventually understood from where I was, from what I was trying to explain to him. And consequently, he started attending daily scrums.
Okay, thanks for that answer. It's a good answer. However, there's something I want to point out. I think that we always feel like retrospective is a time to confront people. Like, that's what the answer sounds like to me. Like, retrospective itself should be one of the steps. If someone had not been coming from daily stand-up, what I expected a good scrum is tell what they tried to do before the retrospective, all right? So if you're going to answer this question, let's say you're going to answer this question with what I said to you, how would you rephrase your answer?
So I'll start from the other end where I had a one-on-one with that particular team member to understand his reason for not attending and coached him on the importance of him attending those.
Yeah, so I like to say that, okay, because you're talking about a real thing, right? Because it's telling me about the time, right? You said it happened to you. Like what you say is, okay, I met with him and he gave his reason. What was that reason? Because the reasons are different. The reasons could be like, oh, it conflicts with the meeting I already had every day. I told you guys when you booked it, I could not get out of that meeting. or oh, it only conflicts on Thursdays because I have a meeting with my manager. Like, come up with like those, maybe give it some meat, right? And say, okay, so we want to know like why exactly were they not attending the day this
Yeah, I
week?
said that before. I said because he had other commitments that were clashing with the meeting. So
Okay, and so he now resolved because you said that he now agreed and said, I think this
he now understood and was able to work his schedule around to attend the meetings.
So I'm trying to tell you guys to star approach, situation, task, action, results, right? You spoke to him and he started attending, almost like it was just because you spoke to him. If it was like, okay, like you said now, like I gave him clarifying answer, he was caught in conflict. He managed to move his conflict around because he realized that it is important that he has to show up, right? Okay, so that's a good one. And who just joined? Who's Neddy? Person disappeared. Because I don't know, that name doesn't sound familiar to me. Okay, let's wait and see who that person is. I hope y'all didn't forward my meeting to you guys. The only okay, good. I have one person that can answer this question. So Ben, this question is for you because I know you have good experience. So let's say now, like now on your resume, you've gone for skilled agile training, right? If they are going to ask you, what skilled agile experience do you have? How would you answer this question? I just want to see if you're able to answer it.
What skilled agile experience do I have?
Yes.
So I'm fresh out of the class, so my answer might not be, because I haven't thought long about this one. But yeah, what I would say is, working with the organization that I work for, we had situations where we had to work with multiple teams to align on certain product deliveries, and we set up multiple teams, and we had to scale on that project or on so many projects. I don't know how to put it, but I'll think about that. But yeah, and that's a tough one, coach.
What
is the question?
What experience do you have in skilled agile? Okay, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
What is the role of a Scrum Master in skilled agile?
The role of a Scrum Master in skilled agile would be to facilitate the ceremonies for his team that he's working with on the.
That's good, but
sorry.
Remember that. So okay, let me simplify for you. So what's your experience? You have to be able to answer this question because once you put skilled agile on your resume and they go and ask you a question, you have to be ready to answer.
Big problem.
As a Scrum Master in skilled agile, the only really big difference between your role and someone who works in Scrum in one Scrum team is that you get to participate in PI planning. So I'll just basically say this. My experience in PI in skilled agile is that I get to participate in PI planning, during which I work with my teams to break down our epics into user stories for it depends on which your company. My company does 6 sprints for their program increments. So I would say I work with my team during PI planning to help them break down the epics into user stories and plan out the 6 sprints for the program increments. I help them to make sure that during the PI planning, which is 2 days, you have to decide the number of days your PI planning is. Because once during PI planning for 2 days, we're focused on breaking down epics, and at the end of PI planning, we are able to have sprint goals for all different 6 sprints and have a better idea of our commitment for the PI, right? That's places you can say. And I also get to participate in Solution Scrum of Scrum on behalf of my team, where we are discussing risk and impediments that we have with other teams in the Agile release stream.
Awesome. I was going to mention the Scrum of Scrums as well, but you said it. You couldn't have said it better. I think, yeah, that's exactly what I would say.
Don't repeat us. Don't like? Let's leave the Scrum part because you're doing Scrum as part of Agile. Skilled Agile is borrowed from Scrum. We only introduced PI planning and release Scrum. Speak about those ones because those are clear. And don't talk too much. Like, just make it very simple.
Please, can you repeat what you said again? I know it's recorded, but
my role, my experience in Skilled Agile is pretty much straightforward. I work with my team during PI planning to help them break their epics into user stories and help them plan all the six sprints the 6 sprints for that program increment. Remember that the program increment is usually a quarter long, and a quarter, some companies do 5 sprints or 6 sprints.
Mine got iterations.
Yeah, so that, you do understand? And then during that period, right? During that period, I work with my team to break down the epics into user stories so that we can create our sprint goals for all the different sprints. I call them sprints within the program increment, and then ensure that we identify any risk and dependencies. And I represent my team at Solution of Scrum, where we're making sure that risk and dependencies are transferred and are being actioned. Keep it as simple as that. So you need to go and study more.
Okay.
I'll get back to this one. That's one thing about this. Okay, so this question: how do you run a daily Scrum? Anthony, are you there? Are you still driving? How do you run a daily Scrum?
I'm still driving. Give me like 15 minutes.
Samuel, how do you run a daily Scrum meeting?
So the purpose of a daily Scrum is to inspect the progress towards the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary. So to start a daily Scrum, you start by asking the 3 questions, which are what work was done since the last stand-up, what work will be done or accomplished, and if there are any impediments blocking the team. So I think that's basically how you start or run a daily Scrum, and the people who have tasks to do or are the ones who are to speak in a daily Scrum. Basically.
Does someone else want to answer? You gave an example. I like it, but I want when people are answering questions, I want them to speak like they, like this is what they do, right? Like I want that. This is how we do it. Does someone want to attempt, or do you want me to? This is a very simple question. So what I'll say is, during a daily Scrum, what I do, there are 2 approaches I have for daily Scrum. for a team that is not mature, what I make sure I do is once the daily scrum starts, I share my screen and I encourage the team to start with going through the daily scrum. I prefer the round robin approach for daily scrum. So what I do is I call on the first person to provide their updates on to provide their updates. I also encourage them to think about the approach of what did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? And impediments. I don't really expect them to answer it in that particular manner, but I just remind them so that they can use that to keep their answers succinct and short, right? Because we only have 15 minutes. So I teach them a round robin approach where the first person provides the update and then passes on to the next person. We go in that kind of like a round circle until all the updates are done. I also make sure to remind them about speaking up about if there are any impediments or risks that they're facing so that we can address those timely. If I observe that somebody is maybe taking too much time for their update or talking about something that we cannot resolve, which could potentially take time on the call, I will interject carefully and ask them to, and encourage them to say, like, this is a great conversation, but we can't solve it on the call because we just have only 15 minutes. Can we take this away after this call to discuss it further? Maybe after everyone is done with their call and we have some time, we can discuss it, right? So I do this to make sure that we are all, we all everyone provides the update. And afterwards, if there are any takeaways, any other things to follow up on, I take note of that. If it's something that I, as a Scrum Master, have to follow up on, I can then book a meeting afterwards to continue that conversation to solve that problem. Otherwise, I make sure that we have identified who is the owner of any action item from that call, and then we call it a day. Any questions? Did you get what I said? Does that make sense now?
Yes, it does.
Makes sense. Well done. Well said.
Well buttressed.
Guys are funny. I'm expecting you guys to say, oh, really? So why do we have sex or something? Like, coach, if I was going to say, so I'm trying to get you guys to think about it in a deeper way, right? Because next time we do another interview program, I'm expecting a different level of energy from the class. Like, I want you to like be answering and be killing the questions.
Yeah. So coach, what I'm taking out of this, or what I would rather everybody takes out of this, is 9 out of 10 times the answers should come from a place of experience or real life situations, and that's why I'm very, very keen on listening to how you would approach those answers, because it's easier for you based off experience, but some of us have to create a scenario that never existed and it might not really sit well. But I really like how you put in it, and it makes a lot of sense how you, especially this, making sure that how you interject, what you say, how you say it. And the previous question where, somebody that is refusing to join the meetings and the daily stand up, the approach, because you have to tell a story. You have to tell a story, and the story has to be, believable. So yes, I'm really learning a lot. Hopefully the next one will be more interactive.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Now let's do, how do you handle a team member that's always talking and would not allow other members to talk?
Question complete. Like, isn't it supposed to say during the
Doesn't
meeting
matter.
or
Anytime. Just think about it, because they don't want to have to tell you the ceremony and then you say it never happened in that event. Like, how do we handle it? It's clear. The question is clear. It's simple. Somebody is always talking and won't allow other team members have their say. How do we handle that?
To me, I think it's just okay.
Yeah, continue, please.
Let's hear you, Sam.
I said to me, I think I'll just highlight the values of Scrum. Remind the person about the values of Scrum. Courage, respect, focus, commitment, and openness. As much as everyone is allowed to speak openly, they should also be respect, and they should also give room for other people to speak and allow every other person to contribute. So I would just basically, remind the person of the 5 values of Scrum and let the person know that everyone, we're a team. It's a team, and the goal is for everyone to be able to contribute fairly. That's how I would go about.
I like that, but I'll tell you though, we all know that if this happened in real life,
real life,
you're not going that your 5 values of Scrum, you're not going to remember it. 1, 2.
Yeah.
If you did remember it, how are you going to present it? Because at the point you're not going to say someone is talking, they're not allowing people to talk. How are you going to even interject and talk about the 5 values of Scrum? How?
I'd start by just letting the person know that it's a team and everyone should be given an opportunity to.
What about if they get defensive? What about if they get defensive? How do you? Because I'm telling you, depending on the kind of person. In fact, sorry, I was in an actual situation like that today. Even though it was me and person one-on-one, right? But how do you do that? Because think about it, you're on a call with other people. Let's say that person is in a call with other people and they're doing this. How would you do that without causing the situation to become a bit uncomfortable? Because one of the things I try to do is that if I notice that one person keeps talking, one of my strategies to do, and I do that, so I actually, for me, it's the same strategy when other people are, when I coach, when I train people, sometimes all of you are silent. It's almost like sometimes I'm talking to myself or there's only one person talking. I start to wonder, are people following? It's the same strategy you use for sometimes for these things, just at the start. I would, especially if I feel like I know someone else that might have a different opinion or might have input on this. So let's say it has to do with testing or something. I might say, hey, what happens if I'm like, and I'm talking. I could say, can you give me one moment? I'd like to ask a question or I'd like to say something. I just try to do that, right? And then I would then say, hey, I hear you talking, but I'm wondering, Lawrence, do you have an opinion about this? Since this is all about development, I try to draw people into the conversation. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And you find that this person is always talking, right? Like that's one strategy. Because if we start to give real out the values of Scrum to them immediately, they're going to go on defensive. It's not going to come out like those things are great, but in the moment, we're not going to talk about that, right? Because we're having a conversation about something, right? So we try to bring other people into the conversation so we can potentially get more voices on the table. But if we observe that this thing happens one-on-one, all the time, you may reach out to the person one-on-one and express this in a sandwich approach and say, hey, how do you think that conversation with these guys went? Let the person talk. Sometimes you say, we went and we did not get what we wanted. I'm going to have to meet you, Anthony. We were on that call and we did not get we did not even get anything out of them. They refused to talk and all of that. Then that might be a good time for you to say, yeah, I wonder why. Then you're like, you can now then say, I just feel like maybe we not give them enough opportunities to speak up because we seem to not allow them to express themselves. You can bring that, you can allow them to talk first and then try a nice way of bringing it in to let them know. I think when we go there, I think that we went there more with an approach of telling them what to do or talking. Why don't we go in there with more of questions so that we can get these results? What do you guys think? So it's all situational. These are two ways you can do it. By drawing other people into the call, if you're a facilitator, because it's important, drawing them into the conversation so that you can start to speak up and potentially let that conversation flow a bit more, let it be less one-sided. And if it's a persistent thing, this person is always dominating the call, you want to have a one-on-one with them and find a nice way, sounding approach one-on-one to ask them about how the calls went and then draw them in. And then you can.
So Pam, I'm sorry to cut you. So
are you there? I'd like to move on from this question. I can't hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I said I agree with everything you said, but aside from talking to the person one-on-one, also each meeting is time boxed. So I think the ground rules before meeting starts should be enforced. Like, this is a particular time you can talk, and the rules should already be enforced before the meeting starts. So each person knows the amount of time they have to talk. There has to be respect between each teammates. Like, you allow other people to talk, not you just talking all the time. So after the meeting, if that continues, then the approach of talking to the person one-on-one, which comes in as that.
So remember, this thing, first of all, let's remember what the question said. How do you handle a team member that always talking and won't allow other people to talk? That's the question. They talk a lot. 2, every meeting has an agenda, but there's nothing like everybody in the meeting. I can't book a meeting and say, there's never a meeting you book and tell everybody you only have 5 minutes to talk. It's not the approach. There's nothing like that. I've never seen that kind of meeting. We can have meetings at time box. It's not even about time boxing. We're not talking about people over extending time box. We're talking about someone that just dominates a conversation, right? That's what we're talking about. 2, we can have a meeting or a Scrum event and a meeting anyway. And we can say, agenda, we have 5 minutes for introduction, 30 minutes for brainstorming and all of that. That itself is how you can time box conversations. This does not specifically say what went on. So I just want to address the question where you say everyone should have an allocated time talk. You don't do that. There's never like, you can never tell people you only have 10 minutes. You can't tell them, what am this meeting? You can only talk for 5 minutes, right? We can be clear that this meeting is going to end in 1 hour, in 30 minutes. And we have to make sure that we facilitate the conversation to happen around that. But it is possible for someone else in that whole 30 minutes to talk for almost 15. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So you can't you're just not going to be able to make someone tell them they can only talk for 5 minutes.
Question, please. Can working agreements be updated? Or it has to only be done in the beginning?
Sorry?
Can working agreements, can you add to your working agreement?
Yes, your working agreement is not final. It's not a contract. Okay. It's an agreement that evolves with time. So as the team dynamics change, as you become mature, as you learn more, that document will evolve as the team evolves. People can't have an old document and keep referring to it. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll also include that in my working agreement. I notice that he talks a lot. We'll try to include it. Everyone should please allow others to talk.
Yep. No talking over each other.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
This is just returning the same questions.
I noticed that too.
It's a random picker. It's just going to randomize. Okay, let me look for it. This is a situational question. Tell me one situation where you made a decision and it was not a popular decision, but you stood by it. What was the outcome? Does anybody want to take this? But otherwise, I can answer. I have so many examples of this. Does anybody want to take it, or should the coach answer it?
Please go ahead. In my opinion, I don't think any of us has made any as a Scrum Master.
So I'll tell you about the situation. I was in a team meeting, and the product owner and the Scrum Master, and the product owner and the Agile coach were having a disagreement, a misalignment in views about capacity planning. And there were other people on that call, and they kept talking back at each other. So they invited me they invited me to mediate. And so what I did was to try and make sure that I asked clarifying questions. But I realized that I was asking clarifying questions. Two of them didn't want to back down, and they kept at each other, right? So I had to make a call, and I just told them, I had to really strongly tell them that I was not going to let the conversation continue anymore, right? I told them, we're going to have to stop this conversation now. We cannot continue with the conversation because we're not going to address the situation on this call with all of us. We need to take it offline, and then we need to have a conversation about it. We did that. It helped de-escalate the situation. But, however, with the two people involved, it was not a popular decision. They didn't like it. Someone felt I took sides with the other person, but I explained myself clearly several times to them after the call to say, if I let you guys continue talking, you would have kept on talking and continued to cause conflict within other people. So I made that choice saying, we're going to end this conversation here and now. We're not going to reach a decision because nobody wants to back down, and we're going to take it offline. It wasn't popular. The Agile coach actually felt, in his opinion, that I undermined him. I did not feel I undermined him. I felt like even as a coach, he should have de-escalated the situation and didn't need me to de-escalate it. But I did. And what was the outcome? Potentially, first of all, I removed conflict for that team. And afterwards, this was about the team's commitment for a PI planning. And even after that situation happened, I still had a confidence vote with the team on that call, even after that situation happened. And we still got a confidence vote of 3.6 out of 5, which wasn't bad, right? So at the end of the day, I really helped to stop a hairy situation happen and move the conversation offline so that those two parties, the Agile coach and the product owner, now we had to take that offline, and had to meet later to iron out the issues and come up with a solution. So that's one example. Another example I can give you, much further in my career.
Before you move forward, you said something about the confidence vote, right? So the confidence vote was on what grounds, on what terms, like
on the work that the team has to do for the quarter, how confident they are that they can do the work. That based on what they've committed, how confident are they that the work they've committed that they can deliver it? So if they have a low confidence, that means there's a problem, and we have to then problem solve it. So if we get anything like 1 or 2 when they finish voting, the average is 1 or 2. In fact, we even get one person that votes 1. Even if everybody was 4.5 and we get a 1, we need to find out why someone is voting the confidence to deliver the work as 1. That means there's a misalignment.
Oh, thank you.
They're not confident that they can do the work. Why? Then we problem solve. Okay. The other one I would say popular decision, or not a popular decision. I once had the task of transitioning several teams from waterfall to agile. And these teams were very resistant. And this was an enterprise mandated transition. Like, we all had transition on a particular day. There was no leeway. We're not allowing people to do it at their pace. We all had to move at the same time. But these product owners went, to executives. They pushed back. They pushed back. So what did I do? I knew that I had to transition them, but they were not going to respond to me. So what I did specifically was I talked to a few of my Scrum team to find out those that were interested in transitioning. And I was able to get what I call a champion within the team, right? A friendly champion who also went to influence other team members. And even though the POs were not really ready to transition, when they overwhelmingly saw that most of the team were willing to at least try Scrum, they moved on with the decision. We eventually tried Scrum. We implemented it. It took a while for the team to get mature, but long term, the team, even the POs, gave feedback long term that Scrum gave them better visibility into how the work was going, and they were more in touch with the development team and collaborating in such a way they were seeing results faster. But when we first transitioned, they were very resistant. As much as saying things on the call like what we're doing was all admin stuff that didn't make any sense. But I kept at it until they started to see the value. That's one example. I won't say I transitioned them by force, but I was not going to. I already negotiated with them. I said, let's try it. If we prove that Scrum wouldn't work for a team, then we've achieved something. Because if we don't transition to Scrum, we're just going to keep on saying to people, oh, it's not going to work, but we can't prove it to them. So if we transition and improve yours and you're proven right that it's not going to work for a team, then there you have it. The results are there. We're not just, pushing back on something that we cannot show tangibility. Do you guys understand that? So I would say look for situations. You've also done things like that in various ways in your job. Look for real things. This is something I've told you, like talk to other Scrum Masters, book one-on-one Scrum Masters, coffee chats, ask them questions. You will learn from them. Any questions there? Okay, so what kind of metric do you use when measuring a project's progress? What kind of Scrum metric or Agile metric?
We use burn down chart.
Okay, how do you use the burn down chart? What do you use to measure?
We use it to measure the work that is being done, and the velocity, the progress reports is a visual representation of how the team is getting work done, and if the meeting and how the time remaining to get the work done, how to meet that time.
So there are two things. Yeah, there are two reports you mentioned now. They're not the same thing, right? Your velocity report is a separate report, which are using to measure the team's velocity. So you're trying to see what they've committed to and what they've delivered in a way to help them be predictable, right? Because with predictability, it means we might be able to estimate when we can finish the work.
Yeah. Those are two different things.
Yes, your burn down chart is for you to see how work is getting over the sprint. How what work was completed and what work is left, right? So this also helps you measure your progress. So you can speak to it like that, right?
Yeah.
Because you can say, okay, by looking at the velocity, by looking at the burn down chart, if I see that the team we keep on having work in progress and hardly ever complete the work, maybe until the last minute, it tells me there's something to be addressed with the team, and I can use this to coach the team for that. Does anybody else want to try? Abiola, is your mic better?
I think you've said it all.
You know that, do you guys realize that there are so many ways to answer this question?
Yeah, there are different metrics.
There's
also a burn-up chart.
Yeah, there's so many
and you also mentioned velocity as well.
There are so many different ways to answer this thing. Some Scrum Masters will have a different answer. What is your approach to backlog refinement? What is your approach to backlog refinement? This should be straightforward. I like this kind of question. If these were the kind of questions they ask you at interviews, you guys will just be scaling through.
Okay, let me go for it. My approach to backlog refinement is working with the product owner to know what he needs in terms of priorities, and we'll prioritize it. We'll also analyze the risk and complexity each of each story point, and analyze based on the prioritization, the risk, and the complexity. We'll move it up at the top. Then the ones with the lower priorities come at the bottom. Yeah, something like that.
Do that again.
So my approach to backlog refinement is working with the product owner to prioritize the story points that are
Not story
either
points. The user
the user
stories.
stories, the user stories that are of higher priority to be at the top. We'll move it to the sprint backlog, while those with lower priorities come at the bottom. And we'll also consider the risk and complexity of each user story while prioritizing. So that's how we approach it.
Okay. That answer is correct, partially correct, not full. Does anybody want to take attempts? It's correct to an extent. You got the whole prioritizing, high priorities to low priority, but you said something about it is sprint backlog. We're not at sprint planning, so this is about backlog refinement. So let's just leave sprint plan out of it. I think I like how you talk about risk and complexity. I like that. There's some other things I'm expecting to see. Does anybody want to take it away? Or maybe people are getting tired at this point because it's been a long interview prep. So let me just tell you, this is the approach to backlog refinement. As a Scrum Master, what I'll do is I'll make sure that during the backlog refinement, I will coach the product owner to prioritize backlog with the higher priority user stories at the top and the lower priority at the bottom. Once we prioritize backlog, then we'll start to refine. We call it backlog grooming before. We don't say grooming anymore. We start to refine the high priority stories. So during refining, I'll be making sure that the user stories are written in the right format. There's an acceptance criteria defined, and also help the team to size that story. Even if it's a rough estimate at that point, I want to make sure that the team has asked all that there are no open questions for any of those user stories at the top of the backlog, right? So that's what we're going to do is make sure that those high priority stories are refined to sufficient detail that meet our definition of ready. And in case we don't complete that exercise during backlog refinement, I just want to also remind the Scrum, I keep on saying Scrum Master, the product owner, to continue refining the user stories offline before the next sprint planning, so that we have user stories that meet our definition of ready ahead of our sprint planning. So your approach to backlog refinement is prioritization, first of all. Then you're going to take each of the high priority user stories as a team and refine them. Should have user story written in very good, clear format. You're identifying risk and dependencies, like Lawrence said. You have your acceptance criteria well defined. You must also put an estimate, even if the estimate is a rough estimate. What are rough estimates? It means that we might not have full detail to provide an actual story point for it. So we can put something like this is what we think about the story point for now, but obviously during sprint planning, when you get to sprint planning, you want to be clearer about your user stories, right? About the estimates. So I'm going to stop. I think everyone deserves a break. We've been on this call for 1 hour 45 minutes. I want to thank everyone that came, but I just want to hear your feedback. Let's see. What's your feedback from this session? How have you found this session in terms of where you are in your job search? What have you found about this session? What's your feedback? Did you find it helpful?
Yeah, I found this session is an eye opener for me. This is my first time having an interview prep whatsoever, and it's different from, like you rightly said, it's different from watching a video. It's the complete. It's when it's interactive, when you are talking, when you are saying these things, it's different from just listening to what you need to say or how you need to say it, as opposed to you actually saying it. And one thing I also picked was writing the possible answers and getting to, say them or just rehearse and understand them and digest them properly. So it will really help me a great deal. I'm really grateful.
You're welcome.
Yeah. For me, it's been really helpful. It's also my first interview prep, and I haven't done any interview yet, so it has just it has been able to I've been able to understand how to answer, because there's a way to answer a question and there's a way to answer it as a Scrum master, like so it has been able to tell me the difference, how to answer it more professionally, like a Scrum master would. So it's been really insightful, and actually, I've learned a couple of things. I wrote some of the questions down, but now I know how to answer
we'll send the question to you.
I mean, I wrote some of the answers. I wrote some of the answers down because I read the questions. I wrote some of the answers down, but now I've been able to know how to answer, the way to answer the questions, not just to answer the question, but the way to answer the questions in a more professional Scrum Master way, in quotes. So thank you.